Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Should I Stay or Should I Go? An advisor's guide to thinking through their biggest decision. It's a special industry update with Mindy Diamond. I'm Jason Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for Financial Advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go? Is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
Turning the tables a bit for this special episode, I'm excited to jump into the host role for a conversation with the person who started it all and talk about a project that's been literally years in the making. That is, creating a resource that offers a roadmap to help top advisors think critically and objectively about their firm. A guide, if you will, to determine if they are indeed in the right place to best serve clients, grow their business, and ultimately maximize the enterprise value of what they've built. Mindy took on this task and developed a one-of-a-kind book drawn from 30 years of counseling financial advisors on the choices that impacted their business lives. In it, she shares some of the secret sauce and processes we use with our own advisor clients. So you might say, why would a recruiter share her trade secrets? Because Mindy is a firm believer in ensuring that every advisor is armed with the knowledge they need to make that critical stay versus go decision. Today's episode, airing September 12th, marks the official launch of the book, which you can find on Amazon or via our website, diamond-consultants.com/thebook. So in this episode, I'd like to switch mics with Mindy and have her talk about why she is so passionate about this book, who it's designed for, what advisors can learn from it, and much more. So let's jump in. Mindy, welcome. I'm as excited about this as you are.
I can't believe this day is finally here. I'm thrilled to be here and thrilled to talk about it.
Absolutely. So for starters, can you tell us the name of your book?
Yes, and the book is called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And in agonizing over every word that I wrote, I also agonized about what is the perfect title. And honestly, like the song said, there was no other title that could have nailed the content of the book and what I was trying to say better than that. Because the single biggest decision that every advisor will make at least once in their career is evaluating their firm and deciding whether it allows them to best do what they want to do to maximize the value of the business they've built and best reflects them. So should I stay or should I go is exactly what the book is about.
Yeah, and I had a firsthand seat or a front row seat into watching the creative process of you writing the book, and it was a massive undertaking. But before we talk about some specifics from the book, can you just tell us on background why you wrote it? Why did you decide to embark on this journey to begin with?
Yeah, so after 30 years of having the privilege, having a front row seat, as you just said, to many advisors all over the country, all different shapes and sizes, all different needs and goals, I believed many things. Number one is that there was a gap. There was no single source where an advisor could really understand, take him or herself through a guide, if you will, for professional self-discovery. There was no real single way for an advisor to objectify their current situation and understand how it could possibly relate to the future. without in some way outing themselves or messing with confidentiality or anything of the sort. And not wanting to be sold. That's the thing most advisors worry about, is that if I do go to a recruiter or I do talk to a manager of another firm, are they then going to set about trying to sell me on making a move when I have no idea if that's the right thing to do? So I wanted to put something out there that was entirely different. And here's the number one thing. I verily believe that knowledge is power. And I know that may say corny and trite, but it really is my truth. I believe that the industry landscape has changed much. The advisor mindset has changed much. The whole world has changed much. And advisors who don't ever take the time to get educated, to really understand where they are in relation to everything else, whether they have intent on moving or not, I think are doing themselves a real service. And I also believe that every advisor deserves to live their best business life. And that's the goal of this book, is to lead advisors to it.
Yeah, and I love how you articulated it, Mindy. It's about living your best business life. It's not your job or your intent in this book to define what the best business life is for a given advisor. It's going to vary. For some, it'll be maximizing economics. For others, it'll be ability to serve clients better. For others, it might be better quality of life. The point is, in our view, this is the single most critical decision a financial advisor can make in their career. And the book was intended as a framework to start thinking about that. But I do have to ask the question because, and you've alluded to this, a recruiter writing a book entitled Should I Stay or Should I Go might lead some to believe that the book is a sales pitch for movement. Can you address that comment?
Yeah, I'm so happy you're asking me that question, because my single biggest worry in writing it is, would people assume because I, as a recruiter, were writing it, that it was a nudge or a hint or a strong, subtle suggestion that everyone should move? That is not my belief. It is my belief forever that if an advisor feels well served, that they are able to do everything they need to do for clients without limitation, they can grow the way they want to, live the business life they want to where they are. It is definitely the path of least resistance to stay put and not move. So I hope that as people read it, they will see it is incredibly balanced. It is not meant to be a sales pitch, because in no way would I ever believe that every advisor should move.
Yeah, I've had the privilege of reading an advanced copy of the book, and I think that's spot on. I want to talk a little bit about the audience for who you've geared this book to. I think it's no secret that your career, when you started this business about 30 years ago, it was more geared towards the wirehouse advisors. That was the population that was in movement more. And I think as the industry landscape has evolved, so too has our business. And now we work with certainly wirehouse advisors, but also independent advisors, RIA advisors, et cetera. Do you view this book as geared towards all advisors, or do you think it's more relevant to the wirehouse crowd?
Not only do I think it's geared to all advisors, no matter where they practice, but I had people read the book, family members that aren't in the wealth management space, and so they learned a lot from it. I think the book itself is a really good primer for challenging one's thinking about evaluating objectively the status quo. Does what I am doing now and where I am serve me? Does it align with my values? Does it allow me to do what I want to do? Those are the quintessential questions that every advisor, whether you practice at Merrill Lynch or you work at a regional firm or you are as fully independent as can be. So the goals might be different for a fully independent advisor versus a wirehouse advisor, but the questions are no different. Meaning, what do I want to be when I grow up? And what are my goals and values? And do I believe that everything that served me then still serves me now? And how do I see my business evolving? And what do I want the end game to look like? And how much do I want to work? And how much freedom and control do I want to have? Those are the kind of questions that the book raises and walks people through how to think, not only raises the questions, but how to think about the answers, and exceedingly relevant to somebody that is, again, at a wirehouse or somebody who is fully independent and either thinking about giving up some control by selling a minority interest or selling the business completely.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is We talk through a lot of this process is introspective. It's work that the advisor has to just ask themselves the tough questions. And this book to me is a framework to help advisors, or to your point, even non-advisors, just people in professional services across the board, to guide them through that journey of self-discovery. And the way we view it, in my mind anyway, is it's a great preliminary step that advisors should remind themselves of early and often. That due diligence, or the idea of exploring options elsewhere, is not a one-time thing where you've looked once and then you'll never look again. It's a constant evaluation of your current firm versus other firms, and you must be constantly evaluating the status quo to be the best steward, not just for yourself, but also for your team. And that's not a sales pitch. That's just the reality of the industry landscape that we live in today.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree. I think you said it really well. It is those things. And I expect that the majority of the people reading the book who will get the most from the book have no thoughts about leaving their firm. They may never leave their firm. They may be certain they will never leave and ultimately leave 10 years from now. They may think that if they leave, they want to go from one major firm to another, but instead wind up 5 years from now going fully independent or something of the sort. It doesn't matter. I actually think that the people that are going to get the most from the book are those that have real interest in optimizing their business. What is the best way to position myself and the business for the future? That's what it's about.
Love that sentiment. So you've just answered this next question, but I'll ask it anyway. Give me a quick soundbite. An advisor reading this book, and hopefully they get a lot out of it, but if you could be sure they only get one thing out of it, what is the one thing that an advisor comes away with?
I think they'll find a roadmap to help themselves think critically and objectively about their firm, and to thoughtfully and strategically help them evaluate whether their business is optimized, best positioned to serve clients, grow without limitation, and ultimately maximize the value, the enterprise value of the business they've built.
So
And I think that term, optimizing their business, is true, should be the goal of every advisor, not because they're thinking about movement, but just because they are holding their business and their firm up to a new light and assessing it with objectivity.
And why is that so important? Like, I get what you're saying, and it's clear that, and especially having read the book, it's clear that the book will allow advisors to do just that. But why do you think today, more than ever, it's critical that advisors are armed with that objective, unbiased, holistic view of the industry?
Yeah, because 30 years ago when I started the industry, I think the choices were really pretty binary. If you worked at Merrill Lynch, you either moved to Morgan Stanley or Payne Weber at the time, or Smith Barney at the time, or Wachovia at the time. But that was really it. You might have looked at a regional firm like a Raymond James or an RBC as a step down. There was no protocol or mandate for independence. And that was it. People felt stuck. It was either just accept what I have or go to more of the same. But as the industry landscape has expanded, and there is such an exceptionally robust ecosystem born to support every advisor, advisors need to know a couple of things. They are never stuck, no matter what they might think they are, how stuck they might think they are. Number two, that they hold all the cards. Many of them work for firms that would have them believe that the firm owns the client, and the only reason for the advisor's success is because they've got Merrill Lynch or UBS on their business card. And nothing could be further from the truth. And that an advisor with a quality of book of business has a ton of leverage. And as the waterfall of possibilities, the options, the places or ways an advisor can practice, and the resources they can access have grown so much that I'm not saying you have to make a move, but to not understand what those options are and compare them to what you have or what you have access to now is the antithesis of being a true fiduciary. Because being a fiduciary is all about knowing with certainty that you are putting your client first and doing everything for their best interests. But if there could be better ways to serve a client, even better ways within your own firm, and you're not taking the time to understand what those are, I think you're doing yourself and your business and your clients a disservice.
Maybe I'll ask this next question through two different lenses here. And you've alluded to, I think, the advisor who never has the intention of making a move. But I'd also like to ask it through the lens of the advisor who maybe does have the intention of making a move, but feels like, I know where I'm going to go, or I know every manager in town. For those two demographics, is this book still a worthwhile read? So the guy who says, I'm never moving, and the guy who says, I could just call up Morgan Stanley down the street and I know where I'm going.
Yeah, so I would like to think definitively yes, and probably for the same reason, because it is a framework for self-discovery, a self-assessment, if you will, lays out the right questions that will help someone in their thinking to get further faster than they would on their own. For the person that's pretty sure that they're never going to move or has no need to move, again, it's a book about how to think about really optimizing your business, the kinds of questions you should be asking your own firm to better your experience. So there's plenty to gain from that. Plenty to gain from that. For the independent advisor, how to better your practice to best position it for day's end when you will sell it, or you will merge it, or you will be succeeded by a next generation. For the advisor that's thinking about moving and is pretty sure they know exactly where they're going to go, I would say to them, certainty is a wonderful thing. And if you have done your due diligence and you know that making a move to XYZ firm is the right next move, that's wonderful. But the key is to have done the due diligence and take the steps and get educated to make certain that's the case. Why? Because as the industry landscape has expanded, even if you're pretty sure you would have no interest in being any version of independent, or pretty sure that Robert Baird would never be a firm for you, or pretty sure that the most important thing to you is maximum upfront money, or pretty sure that your best friend works at Morgan Stanley and that would be the only place you would go, you cannot know that any of those things are 100% true without opening your eyes and getting educated, not with an eye toward moving, but with an eye toward making sure you've got all the facts.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I think the piece we missed a little bit here is the notion of a plan B. And I'm chuckling in my head as we talk about this because you answered the previous question by naming probably 5 now defunct firms or firms that are no longer in existence in the iteration you mentioned. Wachovia, you could add Bear Stearns, Lehman. There are a lot of examples of First Republic most recently, right? Where advisors maybe don't necessarily have the intention of making a move, but having a plan B, either because of something that happens to the firm or because we live in an incredibly heightened compliance and scrutiny world, is never a bad thing. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't even thought about that when you asked the question, but I think that's really right. We hear from advisors all the time, no matter where they practice, that they feel a sense of vulnerability they never felt before. So what you're talking about is the fact that for an employee advisor, they are not in control. The changes that are made, whether it be to changes to compensation or changes in the ownership of the firm or changes in how what compliance mandates, are all things that are not necessarily made with the individual advisor in mind, and definitely not something in the advisor's control. The second thing that's not in an advisor's control is this heightened sense of zero tolerance compliance, that compliance really runs many firms. And so never to be dramatic. And you and I have talked about this a lot we've written about it and we've talked about it in other podcast episodes, but there is a zero tolerance policy, and an advisor that doesn't have a plan B, not because they're necessarily going to move, but because you just never know, is probably doing themselves a disservice. And that's a reason just to be educated every few years about what reality is today and how it's changed.
Yeah, and the reality is too, advisors are not stewards solely of themselves. Advisors have a large responsibility, especially big team advisors. If you are the head of a large team, you obviously have a responsibility to yourself and to your family, but you also have a responsibility to the other advisors and support staff on your team, and certainly to your clients as well. I want to pivot now to what I think will be the meat of this, what I was most excited to ask you about. For somebody who's never read the book, which I assume is almost all of our audience as of the time of this recording, give us an example of either an anecdote or a short excerpt. You don't have to read it, but just give us a story or some sort of sense of what the book is about and what type of information is contained in it.
So there are many, but the one I think that is my personal favorite, I believe, is in chapter 2 of the book. And it's based upon a parable written by Danon Perry, and it is called The Parable of the Trapeze. A friend of mine had brought it to my attention, I'm going to say 15 years ago. I read it. It rocked my world. And as I read it, it's an example or it's a story, a parable, if you will, that I share with advisors that I counsel all the time because it's incredibly relevant. And it is relevant for anybody that is either considering change or scared of change, which is probably most of us. And essentially, without giving away the punchline, the parable of the trapeze talks about somebody who's swinging along on a trapeze bar happily, merrily. May not be perfect, maybe some discomfort, but it's good enough. And all of a sudden, in the distance, they see another trapeze bar that they had never really noticed before, and it's beckoning to them. So, oh my God, do I let go of this sort of comfortably uncomfortable place where I am and reach for the next one where there is unknown? Or do I stay comfortably uncomfortable where they are? But what the beauty of the parable talks about is that once you've seen that new bar, you can't unsee it. And the relevance to what advisors go through is that the downside to being educated is that once you see it and you know that there could be better ways to serve clients or more things you could be doing or better quality of life that's a possibility, more freedom and control that might be beckoning, you can't unsee it. And what do you do about it? That's what it's about. It's a beautiful story. And if you take nothing else from my book, I hope you'll read that chapter, The Parable of the Trapeze, and how I analogize it to what an advisor goes through.
Yeah, and it's actually, it was such a foundational concept that actually I'm looking at the transcript and you made the decision to move it actually into chapter 1. So it was a core building block of the book. And I love the story as well. And it's one we use in conversations with advisors all the time. I have to ask, so you mentioned 30 years you've been in this business. Why now? Why was now the time where you said, I should write a book?
Well, partly because I probably didn't have the time or the bandwidth to do it before. But now with you and your brother really taking over the day-to-day management of the business, it's freed me to do more of what I love and what I do best, which is counseling top advisors and really the bandwidth to think more creatively and strategically about what the future holds and moving the business forward. It's an exciting time for me. So one, I actually had the capacity to do it or more of capacity to do it, even though it was a huge effort and took a lot of time and wasn't an easy thing. But I think why now? Because I really began to realize that this notion, I always talked with advisors about that. I believe that the goal for every advisor is to live their best business life. And I think Oprah was one of the first people to talk about everyone should live their best life. So I talk about living your best business life. And it's not just a corny, trite phrase. It's really what I believe. And I think a lot of advisors don't really think about it that way. And so I knew I had something to say. I wanted to let more people know that number one, they need to think about their business as a business. They've built something really special, no matter how much in assets they manage, that they hold the cards and have leverage. And two, they have the right to live a good quality of business life, a life where their values align with the values of their firm, and that they're able to build a business in their image that align with their goals and their values and what they believe their clients want and need. And from having had a front row seat to so many advisors over the years, I was amazed, and probably you might be amazed by how many people are surprised by that concept, that I actually am not being disloyal. I'm not being self-serving. I'm not being a mercenary by thinking about change. And that if I think about change, it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to do it, but I give myself permission to at least get educated and understand where I am, even if I feel scared, even though inertia may be weighing me down, and even though I feel worried that it's being disloyal if I do so.
Yeah, and I think what a lot of advisors struggle with, particularly big advisors or advisors in growth mode, is the idea that to do any of this, any of what you're describing, requires, as you use the phrase, to work on the business and not in it. You have to take your foot off the gas, which is a very difficult thing to do. We don't mean to minimize it. That is a hard thing for an alpha, top of the food chain type of advisor, for anybody, but let alone a top of the food chain, sophisticated advisor to say, I need to stop growing and stop doing what I've been doing every day and work on the business instead of in it. And I think that's a powerful concept. And it kind of ties in with the concept that sometimes you need to slow down a little bit in order to speed up down the road. Is that a fair sentiment?
It's a great sentiment, and it is exactly right.
Yep. I want to ask a little bit of a meta question now. Anything that you learned, either personally or professionally, from the journey of writing a book, other than writing a book is a huge undertaking and a pain?
Even when something feels overwhelming and daunting, if it's something that you feel is worthy, something you want to do, something worthwhile, that one day at a time, one concept at a time, one page at a time, one chapter at a time, that it's doable. I also think that as I shared, the parable of the trapeze just was a mind-blowing, game-changing, aha, major revelation for me when I read it. And that's what I think about, that so often I get steeped in inertia or the belief that I just can't take on one more thing, or that the status quo is good enough, or we've done enough growing. We don't necessarily need to grow anymore, or yeah, I don't have the time to think about anything else. But even if I use the notion, I knew I wanted to write a book because I really believed I had wisdom that was missing from the marketplace, that advisors really were craving this place for self-discovery without being sold. And I wanted to write it. So despite the fact that I might have been steeped in inertia and overwhelmed and even a little scared, a lot scared, to be honest with you, would people think it's good enough? How will it be received? All of that. At the end of the day, I saw that my next trapeze bar beckoning me. And once I saw it, meaning the idea of writing a book, I couldn't unsee it. And one day at a time, one page at a time, one chapter at a time, I got it done. And I'm proud of it.
As you should be. I love that answer. I think it takes a use case from the book and it shows a real life application that you just lived. And as I said, I had a front row seat to it, and everything you're saying is 100% true. And I know how much of a challenging journey, but also a soulful and meaningful journey it's been to you. So let's wrap up. How can somebody get a copy of the book if they're interested?
Yeah, so the book launches on September 12th. We are actually, the day of the launch, we are donating all proceeds to the United Way, which is an organization that provides health and well-being and financial support for people everywhere in all communities. So we feel good about that. And the book is available on Amazon, and there will be a link to it to purchase it on the show notes of this page, of this episode.
Absolutely. And advisors or anybody can also go to our website, diamond-consultants.com/thebook. And I'll mention also that Mindy was kind enough to record an audiobook version as well, which is also available on Amazon. Thanks again for joining me, Mindy. This was a fantastic topic. I'm so excited for the launch of this book, and I think it'll be a real value add resource for advisors across the landscape.
Yeah, thank you. Writing a book is not only daunting, but it is a lonely exercise. And more importantly, you're really putting yourself out there in a way I probably never had before. So I hope people like it. I feel a little nervous about it being launched, but would love to hear from you, what you thought, how you use it, if you use it. good, bad, whatever experience you have as a result of it. I would love to hear your feedback, and I hope you'll reach out. As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.